Happy Victory Monday, Charger fans. The Chargers took care of business Sunday night against the Steelers at SoFi with a score of 25-10. The defense yesterday played lights out, really stifled that Steelers offense. Herbert, with all the pressure, made clutch plays. Special teams was a lot better than the prior weeks we've seen. Just a great game that the Chargers played. I wouldn't say it was their cleanest game in all three phases, but definitely improvements from prior weeks on the defensive side of the ball as well as special teams last night. And a win's a win in the book. The Chargers improved to 6-1 in the AFC, which is huge. They moved up to the 5th spot in the AFC as well. And we'll talk about all that in this episode. But before I get any further, be sure to subscribe to the Lecture Edge Podcast on YouTube. You can also listen on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Also follow me on socials. I am at Electric Edge Pod on X, TikTok, and Instagram. So we got a ton to go through this episode. I'm going to go through my thoughts. We're going to go through some stats. We're going to go through PFF grades. And then we're also going to go through film review. So without further ado, like I said, we got a ton to get through in this episode. So let's get into it. All right, so I was at the game last night. I will tell you this. I've been going to SoFi the past 2 seasons now since I got season tickets. And I have not seen that many opposing fans in SoFi until last night. So last year, the Chiefs game, there was a ton of red, but last night there was just a ton of Steelers fans, a ton of terrible towels. I was sitting in section 206, so I was in the end zone, and I kid you not, it just seemed like there was 5 Charger fans in my section. Everyone else was Steeler fans. It was pretty insane. I mean, the Chargers were getting booed as they're being introduced. Just pretty wild. But luckily, all those Steeler fans spent a lot of money to go see their team play, and they got blown out the building. So thanks for paying our rent. We appreciate it, and hopefully you enjoyed your trip back home to wherever you're going, whether you're in LA or you're heading back to Pittsburgh. Thanks so much for your donations. With that being said, I thought the Charger fans that were there brought a ton of energy. It was a great vibe last night. Sunday night, it was electric. Going up against a great defense. And that defense has been on and off this year, but they had some great players on that defense. And even with this beat-up offensive line, the Chargers found a way to win. And this win relied heavily on the defensive play. So here's some of my thoughts from last night's game. This is the defense that we're accustomed to seeing. We saw this defense all last year when the Chargers went 11-6. Very dominant performance. I always would refer back to, and this is some of my earlier episodes too, about the bend, don't break thinking, right? Even if the opposing offense gets down the field, you're only giving up field goals. You're not giving up touchdowns. The only touchdown that the Steelers scored last night was 2 minutes and 30 seconds left in the fourth quarter. It was a pass to Roman Wilson. Other than that, we gave up 1 field goal, and our special teams forced a missed kick by Boswell. So this is the defense we're accustomed to seeing. They played great. We saw them get a safety with that Khalil Mack sack in the end zone on Rodgers. Tooley had another sack, and we're going to talk about him later on in this episode. Just a great defensive performance. Our rookies are steady up. Nico Reed had a huge pass breakup. You also had 𝐟𝐨𝐫𝐿 with another pick. He's been playing phenomenal. And just to pinpoint on 𝐟𝐨𝐫𝐿, the Chargers made that trade for Oweh because they knew that they had depth in that secondary, especially with safeties. So they got rid of Gilman. 𝐟𝐨𝐫𝐿 has been slotted in, and he's played great. So I got to give kudos. I always give kudos when they're deserved, right? When it comes to trades and trying to find players and move talent, Ortiz does a great job with that, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So as I mentioned in prior episodes, that was a win-win trade for both Baltimore and the Chargers. But 𝐼𝐸 is making his name known, and another pick. Dante Jackson, another pick off a tip ball yesterday. He's been playing well. I've always said that I've been pretty high in the secondary this year. I thought Dante Jackson, didn't really expect too much of him as a signing. He's played well this year. Ben St-Juste, I've heard all the stuff about him from the Commanders. He's played well this year. Our rookies are playing well. Just a great defensive performance last night against a team with a winning record, right? As I mentioned in my pregame episode, the Steelers, I couldn't really figure them out. They played some great games and they played some bad games. Last week they played great against the Colts, and then Sunday they put up a dud. Just really couldn't figure them out. But regardless, they're on top of the AFC North still, right? They came into this game 5-3. They have a winning record. Aaron Rodgers will be a Hall of Famer one day. You have probably one of the best defensive ends in the league with TJ Watt playing against this beat-up offensive line. And, the Chargers took care of business. I would say a big part of this is because of how well the defense played last night. I was very impressed, and I'd love to see this type of defensive play continue. And this started with, you could say, the Vikings game. The Vikings game, they really turned it around. They were pissed off about their play in Miami. They thought they should have blown Miami out. They got it together against the Vikings at home. They struggled a little bit last week against the Titans, but figured out a way to win, and then just a dominant performance last night at SoFi. So hopefully this defense can continue this high level of play, especially with the stretch of division games coming. So on the flip side of the ball, let's talk about the offensive line. Once again, we knew this coming in. It was going to be a tough matchup between the Chargers offensive line and the Steelers front seven. Herbert took another 5 sacks yesterday. I think he was pressured. Pressured 12 times yesterday. The Chargers went with 𝐷𝐿𝐴CE at left tackle, 𝐬𝐮 at left guard, Bozeman at center, Becton at right guard, and Pipkins at right tackle. No Trevor Penning this week. I am curious to see what the Chargers do this week in practice, if they give him first-team reps and how they fit him into the offensive line, or if he's just going to be one of those guys that is a swing guard tackle going forward this offensive line. I thought is trying to help this offensive line. I thought the game plan as the game went on got better. More of those quick passes, get the ball out, keep Herbert upright, and I'll touch on this in a minute, the run game got going. But still, just way too many hits. There was a tackle on Herbert, that hip drop tackle that should have been a flag, wasn't called. He got up slow. If he goes down, this all falls apart. And I know that we don't have our all-pro tackles. Mekhi Becton has not played at a level we expected him to. We know we have in Bozeman. Zion's played okay. But the Chargers need to, as we get into this tough stretch of games, right? We got Jacksonville next week, then we have a bye, and then we start hitting some division games. Got to keep Herbert upright. Get the ball out quick. Don't take sacks. It's going to be tough to let anything develop down the field when you got a defense rushing 5 and that offensive line can't hold. So I know that this will improve, but just we still have quite a bit of games to go, and Herbert needs to stay healthy in order for this thing to roll and to work. So hopefully some more adjustments are made in practice this week, heading down to Jacksonville, but just still, he's just taking way too many hits, and I'd love to see a much cleaner game next week against Jacksonville in that respect. Let's talk about special teams. Special teams looked a lot better this week. Dicker hit a 59-yarder. J.K. Scott had that punt in the fourth quarter that was muffed, put the Chargers in great field position. I thought they did a much better job tackling this week. We got Boswell to miss a field goal. I thought some of the things we saw last week from the Titans game definitely got cleaned up this week, and we forced a turnover in special teams. So hopefully that trend continues. Dean Leonard was back this week, so going through numbers, I'll have to check what type of grades he got, but I'm sure that made definitely a difference with special teams. So it was good to see that part of the game is starting to be fixed and that ship is going in the right direction once again. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of field goals in this game. Cam Dicker hit a 59-yarder. I think he was 3 for 4 in field goals last night, but There was a lot of field goals for the Chargers. I think there was only 2 opportunities for the Steelers to kick field goals last night, but Dicker once again hitting big kicks when he needs to. Another thing I noticed, this was definitely towards the first half of the game, was there just seemed to be way too many drops. 𝐬𝐮𝐸 had a bad drop. 𝐾J had a couple drops. Ladd had, I think, 1 or 2 drops. There's a forced ball by Herbert. I'd like for the beginning of the game to be cleaner, right? It seemed like Herbert had some time in the first quarter, second quarter, to get the ball out and just not clean catches. And it needs to happen, especially against good teams, right? If you have the chance to convert on 2nd and long, 3rd and long, and you drop the ball, you put your team in a bad spot. So I just felt that there were some balls that were catchable that were dropped. So I'd like to see that cleaned up going into Jacksonville. And I have full faith that it will be. But I just thought there was too many drops in this game for my liking. Kamani Vidal, I touched on this when I started this episode. Kamani Vidal had a great game. We'll go through his stats in a bit, but it's been this Jekyll and Hyde sort of thing with Vidal. One week he has a great game rushing, and then the next week he goes radio silent, and Herbert leads all rushers. In this game, it was imperative, especially with Herbert being a little slow to get up, that they got the run game going so Herbert didn't have to be that leading back. Kamani Vidal played great, caught some balls out in the backfield, did what he could do as far as pass blocking, but another great game. I think he finished, he did a touchdown. I think he had 90-something yards rushing, and I'll confirm that a little bit later in this episode, but would love to see him go into Jacksonville next week and have a similar type of performance, not another performance where he kind of disappears and has under 50 rushing yards. Let's try and build some momentum from this game into Jacksonville with him taking a ton of the workload, running the ball, so Herbert doesn't have to be that guy, especially with, like I said, his ankles getting twisted. Don't know if there is any injury there. We'll have to see Wednesday when that injury report comes out. Ladd with another 100-yard game. I mean, he caught a ball, that 58-yard catch. I don't know how he caught it. I was sitting in the end zone, and the Chargers were going down the field, so the offense was facing, offensive backs were facing me. And I didn't think he caught the ball. And then all of a sudden, you just see him go upfield. And I wanted to pull this up. So I was looking, as I was preparing for this episode, I pulled up Next Gen Stats, and they do animations on the routes. I want to show you the separation of where these dots are. Ball's not out yet. Look at that. He's on him, and he somehow makes the catch. And we'll go through the film towards the end of this episode. You couldn't put a ball better on someone when you had that narrow of a window. And then, boom, right up the field, puts him at, I think, the 13-yard line, and they go and score a touchdown. Just insane. Insane catch. I think Ladd is ranked 12th in the NFL right now in receiving yards, too. So another great game, another 100-yard game, especially after that kind of slow start he had at the beginning of the year. He's right back on target where we thought he would be. Another thing that's noteworthy is that even though we've had this banged-up offensive line, not a single starting offensive lineman went down this week. We've seen week after week one of them get injured, whether it's Becton, Hart last week, someone always seems to get hurt. This week, very clean game. No injury on the offensive line. Good to see. Let's hope that can continue. And let's hope for next week we can get Bobby Hart back in that rotation, playing at right tackle. But on the injury front, we got to keep an eye on 𝐬𝐮𝐸. He left the third quarter yesterday with a knee injury. I know he's going for an MRI today. Something to keep an eye out on. Don't know what the extent of the injury is. From what I've read on X, it's been mentioned that he was walking around the sideline, had his knee wrapped. I think he was on crutches, not sure, but definitely something to keep an eye out on. Hopefully it's nothing serious. It was just a tweak yesterday, and we can get him for next week in Jacksonville. Big record broken yesterday for the Chargers. Keenan Allen broke the all-time Chargers receiving record yesterday. Happened in the fourth quarter with that little pop pass. Really cool stuff. Well-deserved. So glad that the Chargers found a way to bring him back in the offseason. And, I remember when Keenan Allen was coming out of the draft. This was back in 2013. I think I was 20 at the time. I remember the analysts talking about Keenan Allen, that he was a target for the Chargers. And then they draft him in the third round, and he has just been an amazing Charger to watch. It's really cool that the Chargers have had longevity with a ton of players. You think about Antonio Gates, Keenan Allen's in that conversation, Phillip Rivers, for a life of running back, LT, all these guys that have some longevity with this team, to see them break records. And Keenan Allen, in my book, is going to be a Hall of Famer someday. So really cool to see him break that record, and it happening at home in front of us Charger fans that were there. So, and then like I said, Chargers are 6-1 now in the AFC, heading into Jacksonville. I think that's a very winnable game, especially Jacksonville coming off that bad loss against the Texans. And then after that, we get a bye, and hopefully we get healthy, and then we roll right into the Raiders. So, like I said, great win all around. I am super pleased with the performance yesterday, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And let's hope that momentum can continue and carries into next week against Jacksonville. Okay, let's jump into the overall box score of the game last night. All right, let's start off with the Steelers side of the house. So Aaron Rodgers last night, probably one of his worst performances, you can argue, probably in his career. I mean, his QBR was 4.6. Just bad. He did not play well. And that is definitely to the Chargers defense taking away his first read, forcing him to look elsewhere, making bad throws, forcing him to step up, and he's not mobile anymore. Just put pressure on him all night. So Rodgers was 16 of 31, 161 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks, took 3 sacks. Jaylen Warren, 14 carries for 70 yards. It's nice to see that the Chargers kept them under 100 yards rushing. Their top receiver last night was Roman Wilson. And like I said, he had that late catch in the fourth quarter for a touchdown. He had 2 catches for 35 yards. DK Metcalf was super quiet last night. 3 catches for 35 yards. There was one ball, I think it was in the first quarter, where DK was open, Molden was on him, and Rodgers overthrew him. Just quiet night. Just forced some pressure, making bad throws for Rodgers. Freiermuth, 3 catches for 33 yards. Jaylen Warren out of the backfield, 2 catches for 21 yards. And then you have the 1 and 2 catches here and there. Fumbles. I mean, they forced that fumble with the muff punt, so that was recovered by the Chargers. Then Aaron Rodgers did fumble that ball in the end zone where the safety occurred, but he did fall on it. As far as sacks, like I said, Herbert took 5 sacks yesterday. Benton had a sack. TJ Watt had a sack. Herbert had a sack. And then Alex Highsmith had 2 sacks yesterday. All right, let's switch over to the Chargers side of the ball. Herbert, definitely not his best game by any stretch of the imagination, but he did what he needed to do in order to will this team to a win. He was 20 of 33 for 220 yards, 1 TD. He took 5 sacks, like I mentioned. Vidal, 95 yards on the ground. This is what we need to see week to week from him. As a team, the Chargers rushed for 115 yards, which is great. I always talk about you got to get over that 100-yard threshold as a team, and they did do that. Vidal also had that rushing touchdown as well. McConkey, like I mentioned, led receivers with 107 receiving yards and that touchdown towards the end of the first half. QJ was 5 of 42. Keenan Allen, 2 of 19, but that 1 catch broke the record. Kimani Vidal, 1 catch for 13 yards. Gadsden was pretty quiet yesterday. He had some bad drops too. He was 3 of 13. And then you have the 1 or 2 between the tight ends, Trey Harris and Darius Davis. Elshon Phillips, he recovered that fumble on the muff punt. And then as far as defensively, as far as sacks, Khalil Mack had that sack, which was the safety. Tooley had a sack. And Bud Dupree joined the sack party too yesterday with a sack. Now let's go through some team stats. The Steelers were bad yesterday with third and fourth down. So the Steelers were 2 of 11 on third down, 0 for 1 on fourth down. The Chargers were 6 of 17 on third down and 1 for 1 on fourth down. Total yards, the Steelers had 221. The Chargers had 314. Like I mentioned, the Chargers had 115 yards on the ground rushing. Passing yards, the Chargers had 199 compared to the Steelers 148. The Chargers were more efficient in the red zone, which is great. I always talk about being efficient in the red zone when there's a way to score a touchdown or when you're in the red zone. Find a way to score and don't settle for 3. They were 2 for 3 yesterday in the red zone. Penalties, they did not win the penalty battle, but it didn't really matter because of the amount of turnovers the Chargers forced. We forced 3 turnovers on the Steelers, and the Chargers had 0 turnovers. So good to see a clean game by Herbert. No picks this week, which I harped on in my pregame episode to clean that up, and it looks like, at least for this week, that's been mitigated. And then the Chargers just dominated the time possession yesterday. 37 minutes time possession to 22. That's what's going to win you ball games. That's what's going to win you games against tough opponents, division leaders. Time possession, run the ball, don't turn over the ball, limit penalties, and you're in a great spot to win the game. All right, so since we hit overall box score, let's jump over to PFF grades. PFF grades are always one piece of the puzzle. I like to talk about them just because it gives another dimension to what we all watched yesterday. So let's start off offensively with PFF grades. All right, so our top 5 offensive leaders. Kamani Vidal led at 77.2. 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞𝐭 was second with 71.3. Tyler Conklin was 65.5. And that is in regards to his pass block yesterday. And then also he had 1 catch yesterday as well. Trey Pipkins was up there. He did a good job yesterday, 61.3. His pass block grade was at 73.9. That's good for him. And then QJ was at 5 at 61.2. Herbert kind of finished towards the bottom at 50.5. Like I said, it's one piece of the puzzle. But let's talk about bottom 5. So we have 𝐷𝐿𝐻 at 35.1. And this is where I really think that another week under Penning's belt, they're going to slot him in at left tackle. Depth chart right now, Penning is that LT1 spot, but it remains to be seen what they're going to do. They do like 𝐷𝐿𝐻. Harbaugh has said that Penning is going to play the tackle spot. I don't think he's going to play right tackle when Bobby Hart's back, so I think it's going to be left tackle. But we'll have to keep an eye out on practice this week and see where he practices. Okay, Gadsden finished with 37. Tucker Fisk, 44. Mekhi Becton, once again, bottom 5 at 48. And then Jared Patterson at 48.8. I won't continue to rant about Becton. Dude has just not been a good signing for the Chargers, and I don't think he's going to be part of the puzzle next year for us at this rate. But I guess good news is he did play a full game, which is good to see. All right, let's switch over to the defensive side of the ball. RJ Mickens, that great pick yesterday. He led all defensive players with 84.4 as a grade. Nico Reed, like I mentioned, with that pass breakup at 79.2. Oweh at 77.2. Diane Henley's back in the top 5, 75.7. He's had a rough stretch of games, but his tackling was great at 81 yesterday, and his coverage was great at 80. So good to see him have a great game yesterday. And then, like I talked about in the beginning of the episode, Dante Jackson, another pick for the Chargers. He was great at 71.7. Now let's talk about bottom 5. We got Teair Tart at 38.6. Bud Dupree, he did have a sack, though, and that pass rush grade reflects that. He's at 43.4. Cam Hart at 46.8. Elijah Molden at 47.2. And then Troy Dye at 48.5. But I thought our secondary played very well yesterday. Really locked down any threats of any Steelers receivers yesterday. I'm content, even though some of these scores look pretty low. It's only one piece to what you visually see throughout the games. Okay, let's stay on the defensive side of the ball for right now. So Chargers pressures generated against the Steelers. So Deshaun Hand had 4, and he was back. So he had 4 pressures. He had 1 hit. Tooley had 3. He had 1 sack and 1 hit. Khalil Mack had 3. He had the 1 sack. Teair Tart had 2. Bud Dupree had 2 with 1 sack. Justin Aboibe had 1 with a hit. John Caldwell had 1, and Odafe Oweh had 1. The Chargers defense had 17 overall pressures, and it was 29% pressure rate generated. Okay, on the offensive side of the ball, pressures allowed. Mekhi Becton had 5. That pretty accurately reflects his grading, right? 5 pressures, 2 hits. He gave up a sack. Austin Deckles gave up 3 pressures, 1 hit. Bradley Bozeman 2, Zion Johnson 2, Kamani Vidal 2, Trey Pipkins 1 with a hit, Jared Patterson 1, and 𝐾𝐿 had 1. For 18 total pressures with a 42% pressure rate allowed. Like I mentioned, the game plan has to continue to improve to get quick passes out, keep Herbert upright, and have to limit these pressures and sacks on him. We still have 8 weeks of football left, plus postseason. Got to keep him healthy for the next 8 weeks. It's good that we're coming up to a bye soon, but still, got to figure out a way to weather this storm and keep Herbert healthy for the remainder of the year. All right, let's pull up some film from yesterday. So I want to go through the 5 sacks that Herbert took, plus 𝐾𝐿's throw. I believe this is the hip drop tackle on Herbert. Okay, so we have 1. Looks like the Steelers rushed 5 on this. All right, Herbert's got to go, and then that hip drop tackle. Second one, this is for 7 yards. This is Benton getting to him. Once again, the Steelers bring 5. So it looked like, just going through some initial film today, they rushed 5, they got to Herbert, and then they did rush instances where there was 4 and also got to him. Okay, this is Highsmith. So in this one, they bring 4. This is another Highsmith one. And this is very clear based on this film. If the Steelers rush 5, the offensive line cannot hold up. But you'll see here, this is a 4-man rush. And he still gets sacked. He's looking to his right. He does have, I don't know who that is in the middle of the field. I think it was Keenan Allen in the middle field open. But same deal. And you got an extra guy, right? And somehow he still is getting sacked. And then this is TJ Watt's sack on him. So they rush 4 again and just gets beat off the edge. Tries to step up and gets beat. Okay, let's pull up this 58-yard catch. All right, so on this, the Steelers got everyone at the line. So they bring 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys. 6. 1, 2, 3. Yep. They bring 6. And look at this window. Look at this window. The defender is on 𝐾𝐿 at about the 43-yard line. Boom. Hits him. And he's gone. Just insane. Just an insane throw. And I'm going to be biased, right? I'm a Chargers fan. This is a Chargers fan-led podcast. The Chargers are 7-3. They've lost their 2 starting tackles. They've lost their 2 starting running backs. And somehow Herbert, week to week, finds a way to will this team to win. And for the most part, it's been on him, right? The defense, I would say, carried this team yesterday. How do you not talk about him in the MVP conversation? I hear all this talk about Drake May. I still hear about Josh Allen. Don't know why. Matt Stafford, great. Jonathan Taylor, well-deserved. But Herbert should be in the conversation. I'm not expecting him to win it. But I think the dude commands some type of respect with what he's able to work with. Now, it's going to be interesting to see as the season progresses whether or not Herbert does jump into that conversation if the Chargers overtake first place for the division. And we'll talk about this in my pregame episode with Jacksonville, which I will have a special guest on, so be sure to tune into that. Denver and Kansas City play next Sunday. Denver loses, the Chargers win. They overtake first in the AFC West. So if somehow, some way, the Chargers do win the AFC West, does Herbert get slotted back into that MVP conversation? Now, I have to give credit to this coaching staff. I've been very critical when it's needed on coaching. I've been critical on Ortiz. I'm going to give credit to this coaching staff because that offensive line, with what they have to work with, found a way to hold up just enough for the Chargers offense to get things going, put points on the board, and come out with a win. Like I said, against a division leader in the Steelers, regardless of how they've played, they're still a division leader in the AFC North. So I put this out on X. I don't want to be too overly optimistic, but you think about the injuries this team has taken. You think about the players that have had that next man up mentality. You're one game out of leading the AFC West, which could easily be overtaken next week. Why can't the Chargers make a run? Now, granted, that means everyone has to stay healthy, which is just not going to happen in the NFL. But why can't the Chargers make a run going into the playoffs? Right, we're 8 weeks out from the playoffs. A lot of time left. The Chargers right now are sitting at an 87% chance of making the playoffs with that win. I think if they win next week against Jacksonville, that goes up to over 90%. But why not the Chargers? I think the AFC this year is wide open. Yes, the Colts are good. Yes, the Patriots are good. But, these are teams with, just like the Chargers, right? When's the last time they've won in the playoffs? Don't think the Bills are that good this year. The Ravens are coming, but let's see how they play down the stretch. They have a bunch of division games coming up as well. Why can't the AFC in general be up for the taking this year? There's a lot of time left for things to happen. I just think that the Chargers win next week. Denver loses. You have momentum going into your bye week. You're going to get Hampton back against the Raiders, and you never know what can happen. I saw a defense last night that can compete with any team in the league. I really believe that. I think if that defense showed up against the Colts, it would have been a much different game. I say that for all the losses. That those 3 losses this year, if that defense we saw last night played against any of those games, the Chargers would have come out with a win. But that's the name of the game in the NFL. You got to have the same or better performance week after week, show up week to week, and it is very tough to do in a grueling 18-week schedule. But overall, great win last night. Super stoked. I had a long night. Like I said, I was at the game. I didn't get home until almost, I think, 1 a.m. last night. Luckily, no flights delayed out of LAX with all the travel issues going on. So, yeah, another great night at SoFi. Can't wait to do it all over again against the Raiders. So, if you are going to a game, let me know. And happy to meet up with anyone who watched the show. So, with that being said, be sure to like, subscribe to Electric Podcast on YouTube. You can also listen on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Also follow me on socials at Electric Pod on X, TikTok, and Instagram. And Charger fans, let me know in the comments below what you thought of last night's win at SoFi against the Steelers. I do have to say that I put out my Bolt Blast in my pregame episode, and I was 1 for 2 last night. So I said that the Chargers would pick off Aaron Rodgers, which they did. However, Herbert did not have 300 yards of total offense, which is okay. I'll take it 8 days a week when we win the game. So 1 for 2 on that. So Charger fans, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you're enjoying Victory Monday today with that dub on Sunday Night Football in primetime. The Chargers also are 4-0 in primetime this year. So that's pretty cool as well. So as always, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Electric Edge Podcast. And as always, go Chargers and bolt up.